Nixon had several problems with the press, and in fact, I stopped the narrative for only two things in the book. I stop it to talk about Nixon in the press, and I stop it 2 times to talk about Nixon and civil rights, because these are really good indications of his character. He grew up or entered politics as the favorite of the Los Angeles Times, which was then a very conservative newspaper in Southern California, and came to believe that the game was rigged, that newspapers declared favorites, and there wasn't any tradition of objectivity in the reporting. And when he got to Washington, he expected the same thing. So when there were critical articles written about him, he saw them as enemies from the other side. He had never actually run into them in California, but now here they were, and they were against him. And believe it or not, large segments of the American media are left-leaning and liberal. And they didn't like Nixon from the get-go. They didn't like him because he had defeated liberal heroes to get to Washington, and they didn't like him because as soon as he got to Washington, he exposed a former Assistant Secretary of State as being a Soviet spy who was a darling of the left. And so right from the beginning, there was this confrontation. Another man like JFK, more secure in his shell, may have been able to endure this, but not Nixon. It gnawed at him. He was always insecure, and that insecurity, no matter what his accomplishment, it was never enough for him, because he felt bad about himself as a person, and felt that it would never last. He would never be happy, and so the press was this constant irritant to him. The files are filled with advice from well-meaning aides, reporters, friendly reporters saying, stop, go to the press bar, have a drink with these guys, make connections. This is awfully self-destructive behavior. But it's true. In the middle of the, at the end of his first term, when the peace negotiations with North Vietnam hit a bump, he ordered a massive bombing of North Vietnam called the Christmas bombing. And so on the tapes, there's this amazing transcript where Kissinger comes in and they're talking about military and strategic and diplomatic maneuvers, and then all of a sudden, Nixon starts screaming at Henry Kissinger, the press is the enemy, the press is the enemy, the press is the enemy, the professors are the enemy, the media is the enemy. Write that on your blackboard 100 times, Henry. And it would erupt like that over and over and over
again. But he didn't tweet it.
He didn't tweet it. Yeah.
And Kissinger ignored it. So
that's right.
Yeah.
And he didn't say the press was the enemy of the American people,
Yes.
which is a step higher. And in Nixon's case of lying, Nixon had like a basic respect for the intelligence of the people, that his were clever lies. Trump's are such blatant lies. Like, Paul Manafort was not a major player in the Trump campaign, or I've been wiretapped by Barack Obama. That it's almost surrealistic. It's almost an insult that Nixon never would have done like that. He was. I give you an example. When they came back from China, they had lost the chopsticks, and somebody said, "Well, we really want to preserve a set of the chopsticks for the Nixon library." And Nixon said, "Grab any pair of chopsticks. The people will never know." So I mean, he did not have a basic reverence for truth either. So.